this story a bit longer. The markets have responded swiftly to the appointment of Mboweni. He's expected to deliver the medium-term budget policy statement in 2 weeks' time. Business anchor Devan Murugan is at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange with more on the market reaction. Dev, good morning to you. So, how are the markets reacting? Safe pair of hands is possibly the kind of phrase that's been used for the appointment of Tito Mboweni. How are the markets doing at this time?
Well, quite favorably. Good morning, Polly. You know that the markets would have had just about 20 minutes after the announcement of Tito Mboweni being the new finance minister. That happened around about 5:20 yesterday. And what we can see is that the local stocks in particular, banking shares, retail shares, gained on the strengthening of the rand. But I want to zone in here, and let's just use three variables to account or measure how markets really responded. We're going to look at the rand, we're going to look at local stocks on the JSE, and then of course we will look at our bonds, because remember, bonds are essentially investors buying of our debt. And I do have Isaiah Mhlanga, the chief economist at Alexander Forbes Investments. Isaiah, good morning, thanks for coming in. So let's look at those three variables. We've seen 50% in the rand gaining. I want to talk about bonds and I want to talk about local stocks. Have I got it right that those are basically the three elements we would look at to see how markets are looking at this new finance minister, Tito Mboweni? Go through it with us.
I think if you look at the reaction of local financial markets, they have been quite positive. If you look at the dollar rand closed yesterday with merely about 20-30 minutes of trading, 1% stronger. If you also look at the euro-rand exchange rate, also was 1% stronger, which means there is a general acceptance of the appointment of Tito Mboweni. But if you look at bond yields, they have closed over 5 basis points lower, which means the cost of funding for the state has reduced merely by the appointment of Tito Mboweni. But now if you want to distinguish between what is the global impact on our stocks versus a local impact on our stocks, you look at banking stocks. The likes of FirstRand closed 2% stronger yesterday, which means there's a general acceptance of Tito Mboweni's appointment yesterday.
Okay. When we try and figure out what is it that local and domestic investors are really seeing as a positive aura around this appointment, I mean, what would it be? Surely, we've spoken about this over the past few hours, his credibility, his past as the Reserve Bank governor, which puts him in a strong reputational view amongst the global community. But what is it that the business community is really looking at as a strong points of this appointment?
I think you have to look at the importance of National Treasury in its function within the South African economy. It's such a crucial institution which has had 5 ministers over the past 5 years, and you're looking for someone that is credible beyond reasonable doubt, and Tito Mboweni brings that to the market. He has been in public office for a very long time with very strong links with the international investors, which is going to aid to rebuilding confidence in the South African economy. And again, you take the president's drive to attract $100 billion in investment. That's going to be positively impacted merely because of the networks that he comes with from both public sector and from the private sector.
I think that's a very important point, Isaiah, because now we see President Cyril Ramaphosa on this drive to attract investment and to create jobs. At the focus here is that social pact between government, business and labour. Here you have a new finance minister that's been in the midst of labour. He was a labour minister in Mandela's cabinet. Then you have him in place for 10 years as the Reserve Bank governor. So in that sense, he sits very well to strengthen this social pact. Am I reading that correctly?
You are absolutely reading that correctly, but also there's an added layer to the discussion. He has been out of public office for some time, which means he doesn't come with a political, influence to the same extent as other people that have been in public life for some time in the recent years, which means he's going to be much more independent in his thinking. But at least we have to acknowledge that National Treasury is an institution. It doesn't function as a single institution. It works with other government departments in an economic cluster such that he is not going to come with something that is completely new. The budget has already been completed. It's due to be tabled on the 24th of October, so we shouldn't expect any change in terms of the numbers that are in the budget. Those are going to remain the same. It's merely the tone or the emphasis which is going to be personified by a new finance minister.
I want to ask you, business often been accused, both domestic and international investors, of not opening up their purses, hoarding cash, not investing. Would anything be different when you look at the former finance minister, Nhlanhla Nene, and Tito Mboweni? I would imagine that just changing the face alone doesn't get investors to open the cash. At the end of the day, Treasury is still the institution that they look at.
That's very true. At the end of the day, changing an individual does not change our world in one day. It's really the policies which business wants to see being tweaked in a business-friendly manner. And we've already heard the president say he wants to reduce administrative prices, which include the price of electricity, the price of at our ports, also cutting some of our trade tariffs that prevents a better trade with the rest of the world. I think those are some of the policies that are required to be changed. Merely changing a finance minister is not going to change our world overnight. I think businesses will continue to look for more changes on the policy front before they can invest their hard-earned funds in the local economy.
I want to close up by asking you, in the next few hours, in the next few days, when we try and measure the response of investors in the markets, surely we can't look at the local or the JSE overall, because so much of the JSE has a foreign component. It doesn't matter what happens locally. But what would you be looking at as far as bonds, the rands, or the local market is concerned to measure this acceptance in the next few days?
I think if you take where the rand was trading before the rumors of potential removal of Nhlanhla Nene it was in the lower 14s. And it went up to 15, so we expect, or we will be looking for the rand to continue to strengthen towards the mid 14s, or at least in the 1420, 1430 range. And we also look at bond yields. We would expect them to continue to drift lower, which will be a reduction in that risk premium that was put when the rumors started to surface in the media. But also we look at the local component of the JSE. That would give us a sense of what does the local investors think. And also, if the currency strengthens, we'll also look at the weakness in some of the rand hedge stocks. That would be a testimony that we are seeing some positive reaction continue to filter through into our markets.
Zahima Shlanga, Chief Economist at Alexander Forbes Investment. Thanks very much indeed for your time. So, Xoli, there you have it, breaking down those components, those variables that we will look at just to measure again the acceptance of Tito Mboweni as Finance Minister. As we move ahead towards Friday, that's a big day, Xoli, because that's when Moody's does its next review as a ratings agency on South Africa. Let's remember, it's just one of three big ratings agencies that still has us on the cusp of investment grade.
Yeah, that Friday date, very important to keep an eye on. Thank you very much, business anchor Devan Murugan.